Do you believe that the prosperity you are seeing, those skyscrapers, those green stock market indices, are actually just a mirage built on a massive financial grave? Imagine a world where your wages never increase for 30 years, but house prices skyrocket to unimaginable levels. A world where clinically dead companies are still pumped with oxygen to pretend they are alive, draining the vitality of the economy. That is not a script for a dark sci-fi movie. That is the reality that happened in Japan, once the second most powerful economy in the world. But here is the question that keeps you awake tonight. What if Japan's lost decade was not a mistake, but a weapon blueprint? And that weapon is now aimed directly at America, Europe, and possibly the economy where you live. We are talking about inflation, debt, and the job instability you feel every day. None of it is accidental. It is the repetition of a script written 30 years ago. Today, we will peel back the truth about the Japanification of the world, a sweet trap that is swallowing the globe. Before we go down this rabbit hole, let me know, where are you watching this video from? Do you feel your purchasing power evaporating? Leave a comment below. And do not forget to subscribe right now, because what I'm about to reveal is the naked truth that the mainstream media dares not tell you.
To understand our terrifying future, we must travel back in time to Tokyo in 1989. At that time, Japan was not just a powerhouse, they were economic gods. Picture this. The land area of the Imperial Palace in Tokyo back then was valued higher than all the real estate in California, USA combined. Yes, you heard that right. The Japanese were so rich, they bought American icons like the Rockefeller Center, Van Gogh paintings for record prices, and spent money as if there were no tomorrow. The Nikkei 225 index touched nearly 39,000 points. Everyone believed land prices would never fall. Japanese banks lent recklessly, based on collateral values being inflated insanely. Greed reigned. Delusion took the throne. They believed Japan was the exception, the sun that never sets. But then, the bubble burst. In the early 90s, the stock market crashed. Real estate prices plummeted. Usually, in a healthy capitalist economy, when a bubble bursts, greedy speculators go bankrupt, assets are repriced, and the economy hurts for a few years before recovering. That is the rule of creative destruction. But Japan said no. The government and the Bank of Japan refused to accept the truth. Instead of letting the market clean itself, they started printing money. They lowered interest rates to record lows. They pumped liquidity into dead banks to keep the system from collapsing. Sound familiar? Look at the year 2008, subprime mortgage crisis, real estate bubble burst. And what did the Federal Reserve do? They did exactly what Japan did. Lowered interest rates to 0%, launched massive quantitative easing packages to save the banks that were too big to fail. But that is not all. Look at the year 2020, when the pandemic hit. The whole world, from America to Europe to the UK, simultaneously pumped trillions of dollars into the market. Interest rates were forced into negative territory in Europe. The US stock market hit new highs while the real economy was in lockdown. Sound familiar? Japan set a dangerous precedent, using debt to cover up inefficiency. And now, 30 years later, America has a debt-to-GDP ratio exceeding 120%. France, Italy, Spain are all drowning in debt. The whole world is behaving exactly like Japan in 1989, believing that printing money can solve every problem. They think they can control this monster. Japan thought so, and the result was 30 years of no growth, an aging population, and a zombie economy. Sound familiar? We are not looking at Japan's past. We are looking at a mirror reflecting our own future. But the scariest thing is not the bubble. The scariest thing is the underground mechanism they use to maintain this artificial life. A mechanism so sophisticated, it turned the entire financial system into a rigged casino.
You might be thinking, Printing money causes inflation. Everyone knows that. But wait, if it is simply printing money, why did Japan fall into deflation for decades? Why did prices not skyrocket immediately, but the economy froze? This is where the story takes a turn few expect. The secret does not lie in the amount of money printed. The secret lies in the control of the price of money. The real mechanism that killed the Japanese economy and is killing the global economy is not natural recession. It is a policy decision with a technical name but brutal consequences. Yield curve control combined with nurturing zombie companies. Imagine a forest. When an old tree dies, it falls, decomposes, and becomes nutrition for new saplings to grow. That is nature. That is life. But the Bank of Japan decided not to let any tree fall. They used wire, which is cheap money, to tie the dead trees upright. The result? Sunlight is blocked. Saplings, the startups and innovators, cannot grow. The whole forest becomes a standing graveyard. Who pulled the strings for this insane decision? Who decided that turning the entire economy into a zombie was better than suffering the pain of rebirth? It was not just a central bank governor. It was an underground alliance between the government, the central bank, and giant financial corporations. They created a permanent liquidity trap. And the tool they used to lock this trap tight is the very thing you see on financial news every day without knowing its danger. You will not believe the name. It sounds harmless, even protective, but in reality, it is a death sentence for your prosperity. The receipt for this policy is wilder than you think. Let's dissect this death machine right now. Welcome to the engine room of Japanification. Let's simplify this complexity. This mechanism operates on two main pillars: ultra-low or negative interest rates and zombie companies. First, let's talk about interest rates. Interest is the price of time, the price of risk. In a free market, if you want to borrow money but perform poorly, you must pay high interest. If a government borrows too much, investors demand higher interest because of default risk. But the Bank of Japan destroyed this rule with yield curve control. They declared, "We will buy unlimited government bonds to keep interest rates at 0% or near 0%. What does this mean? It means market signals are dead. No matter how much the government owes, they can still borrow cheaply. This leads to the first shocking statistic. The Bank of Japan currently owns over 50% of all Japanese government bonds. Think about that. Half of the national debt market is not held by investors, but bought back by the nation's own money printer. This is self-dealing on the largest scale in history. What is the consequence of artificially suppressed interest rates? It births the second pillar: zombie companies. When money is dirt cheap, banks continue to lend to losing companies to pay interest on old debts. These companies should have gone bankrupt 20 years ago, but thanks to this cheap cash flow, they exist like ghosts. They do not invest, they do not hire more people, they do not raise wages, they just exist. Look at the second number, a testament to this stagnation. Real wages in Japan have barely increased for the last 30 years. While the world moved forward, Japanese workers stood still. Why? Because zombie companies hog capital and labor, preventing the formation of dynamic new industries. Labor productivity is stifled by the burden of debt. Now, look at the world. America and Europe are copying this model. Japan's public debt has exceeded 260% of GDP. This is the highest debt level in the developed world, an unimaginable number. If interest rates in Japan rise by just 1% or 2%, the entire national budget would be wiped out just paying interest. The Japanese government is forced to print money to keep rates low, otherwise they default immediately. They are trapped. And America? The cost of paying interest on U.S. public debt has officially surpassed $1 trillion per year. This figure is larger than the U.S. defense budget. America is walking the exact path Japan took: debt piling up to levels where high interest rates are unacceptable. The Fed is forced to return to easing, forced to save the market, regardless of inflation. This is parasitic finance. The financial system no longer serves the real economy of production and services, but sucks blood from the real economy to nurture asset prices like stocks and real estate. This mechanism creates a massive moral hazard. Big corporations know they will always be bailed out, so they borrow to buy back stock, enriching shareholders and executives instead of investing in factories or technology. The result is a brutal wealth transfer. Printed money flows into the pockets of asset holders, the rich and the old, while inflation and stagnation weigh heavily on the shoulders of wage earners, the poor and the young. Look at the fifth number, the most terrifying figure on a global scale. Total global debt has exceeded $300 trillion. We are living in the biggest debt bubble in human history. And the only guideline for policymakers is to do as Japan did: buy more time, turn everything into a zombie so no one has to die today. But the price to pay is a slow collapse. It is the despair of the young generation unable to afford homes. It is extreme wealth inequality. It is an engineered collapse where pain is prolonged indefinitely instead of taking a bitter pill to heal.
Japan survived these 30 years of being a zombie thanks to one factor. They have massive domestic savings and are a creditor to the world. But America, Europe, and many other nations following this path are debtors. When the whole world gets Japanified, there will be no one left to export inflation to, no one left to save us. The modern system is faster, more connected, and more fragile than ever. The next collapse will not take 30 years. It could happen in 30 days when faith in currency collapses. We're living in an era of denial. Financial institutions are living on borrowed time. They're gambling your future to maintain their power. The stability you see is just a thin layer of paint covering the giant cracks of a building about to fall. Do not become a victim of ignorance. Do not let your assets be eroded by these zombie monetary policies. Be awake. Be skeptical. So the final question I have for you is this: are we wiser now after the lesson of Japan, or are we walking the same path in better suits? If you want to know how to protect yourself before this financial tsunami hits, share your skepticism in the comments. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe immediately so you do not miss the next Naked Truths. Truth is the only weapon you have. See you next time.